Hey everyone, it's Soul here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. After playing through and experiencing the tragic story of Ethan Winters and his family in Resident Evil 7 and 8, the time had finally come. I had to jump back to the very first game, the game that started it all, Resident Evil, the remake. Look, I know I didn't get the true original experience here, but with the remake being so popular, it just made the most sense for me to play this game. But going into this experience, I thought I'd regret playing this game. I thought it would be too difficult, and it definitely was challenging at times. I thought it would drag on for way too long, which it also kind of did towards the ending. And most importantly, I thought the gameplay would get boring, but to my surprise, it did not. So how did this game from 2002 that's based off of a game from 1996, which is nearly 3 years older than myself, capture and keep my attention as someone who is still a fairly newbie gamer who plays games on the newer gen consoles and enjoys games like this, and this? Well, let me walk you through my entire thoughts and feelings when playing through the Resident Evil Remake. Before we dive in though, please remember to hit that like button, click subscribe to see more videos from me, follow me over on Twitch, and leave a comment down below. Here is your one and only warning that this video contains spoilers. Alright, grab those lighters, sharpen those daggers, and let's wander into it. When I first sat down to play the Resident Evil Remake, I was really concerned that I'd be walking into a gameplay experience full of blocky, blurry, and pixelated images. However, to my surprise, the game looks really good. Now, the version that I played is actually the HD remaster of the remake from 2002 that was released in 2015. So these graphics did get a bit of a facelift from their predecessor, but the overall mechanics behind how they ran this game was not remade or changed for this release. And honestly, looking at these side-by-side comparisons of the 2002 and 2015 versions of the game, while there are some noticeable improvements, the 2002 version is still not anywhere near as bad as I thought it would be. So overall, these graphics were a major step up from what I had anticipated. And the fact that these character models looked so good in this 2002 version led me down a tiny bit of a rabbit hole as I went on to research how they made these graphics. Back in 2002, Capcom wanted to remake the Resident Evil game, partially because the Resident Evil movie was coming out, so releasing the game would help build hype around that, but also because the creators and developers felt that they could truly do this story justice with the newer technology. With the release being exclusive to the GameCube at the time, this remake went on to revamp not only the graphics and the visuals, but they also added new aspects to the game, new cutscenes, new dialogue interactions, and most importantly, they changed some of the timings of certain interactions with enemies in order to create a brand new experience for players that had already completed the 1996 version. What really went on to capture my attention, however, was how they managed to make these 3D character models look so good for their time period. In order to save processing power, the developers decided to use 2D rendered backgrounds. They essentially have just photos of the settings that the 3D character models are walking through, which is why we have to have these fixed camera angles. And while I know the fixed camera angle does get a bit of back and forth amongst fans, me personally, I didn't mind it. I've played a few other games that have an almost fixed camera. Yes, this was the only time I've played a game where the camera is completely static like this rather than moving around a little bit. But after a while into the game, I kinda completely forgot that this was initially a bit of a challenge. However, what did remain a challenge for me throughout the entirety of this game was the controls. Now, I knew going into this that I would definitely struggle with the gameplay. There's a lot of little puzzles, there's a lot of steps that you have to take in order to complete your tasks, but I didn't expect the controls to be this much of a challenge. Aside from just having to get used to walking to and from the camera as your character because of this fixed camera angle, I then had to relearn how to use my controller because each button had now changed so drastically from what I was used to. Games nowadays are almost identical even when you jump from Xbox to PlayStation. So playing this game from 23 years ago, the thought never crossed my mind that the controls could be this different. Which, in hindsight, it obviously is a good thing that it's this different because video games have come a long way in 23 years, so of course the controls would be different. But can we all just agree that thank goodness this aim feature is no longer a thing in modern day games, because having to judge the distance of the enemy while trying to shoot either straight up or down made it all the more challenging. However, before I could even begin to struggle with these brand new controls, the game captured my immediate attention with this captivating intro scene.
Alpha Team is flying around the forest zone situated in northwest Raccoon City, where we are searching for the helicopter of our compatriots, Bravo Team, who disappeared during the middle of their mission.
Haven't found it yet?
No, not yet, Brad. Bizarre murder cases have recently occurred in Raccoon City. There are outlandish reports of families being attacked by a group of about 10 people. Victims were apparently eaten. The Bravo Team was sent in to investigate, but we lost contact. We continued our search for the other members, and it turned into a nightmare. This way. Damn it! Make for that mansion!
Our first introduction to the STARS team and the world of Resident Evil is shrouded in mystery, action, and drama, with also a slight touch of comedy. Wesker looks like he's straight out of the Terminator movie, which just kind of felt cheesy to me. But then we also have Brad just straight up abandoning his team and flying off into the distance on the helicopter, which definitely made me chuckle. So as I watch this elite task force, the STARS team of Raccoon City PD, enter into the woods and quickly find out that they are well out of their depths being attacked by these zombie dogs, I will admit I was very intrigued to see where this story would go. Me personally, I really like narrative-heavy games. If the story is good, I am more likely to stay, and while this story is, yes, a bit cliché, being trapped in a mansion and needing to escape, and even the plot twist later on of Barry being sort of framed as the bad guy and then him not actually being the bad guy, all of that is pretty predictable and it's quite simple storytelling. However, despite the lack of complexity within the story, with the amount of cutscenes they had scattered around throughout the game, and with the cutscenes always leaving some sort of unanswered question, the game had just enough going on within the story and the right amount of cheesiness to it to keep me interested and invested. And I think this intro scene captures all of that perfectly. It kept me wondering, what happened to Bravo Team? Whose mansion is this? What happened here? What is this mysterious infection that is affecting these dogs? What happened to Chris? And the biggest question of all, how on earth are they going to make it out of here alive? So with this fun, action-packed intro here, I was on board with whatever they would throw at me next, or at least I thought I was ready. I'ma tell you right now, I was not, because this game throws a lot at you. Entering into the mansion, if you play as Jill, you will be searching for Chris along with Wesker and Barry, but if you play as Chris, you will be searching for Barry. Now, in my playthrough for this game, I ended up playing as Jill, which thank God you guys convinced me to play as her. Since I had just finished up Resi 8, I really wanted to play as Chris Redfield since I wanted to get to know him as a character. However, you guys informed me that Chris has 2 less inventory spots, which is why we ended up playing as Jill. So honestly, thank you guys so much for that one, because the inventory management in this game is difficult enough to get used to as a first-time player, so I can't imagine going into this game blind with only 6 inventory spots. So once again, thanks for chatting in the live stream with me. So with our trio arriving together at the mansion, they swiftly decide to split up so that they could cover more ground and try and find more clues on how to get out of here safely and to try and find out what happened to Bravo Team. But after a very brief amount of time wandering around the mansion, something happens to Jill that goes on to make the events even worse for this evening.
Barry!
What is it?
Look out! It's a monster!
Let me take care of it!
With these infected in every single hallway, you kind of have to go forward with the gameplay, trying to solve all of these different puzzles, while balancing this very intricate dance of deciding when to shoot and attack these zombies, or when to try and dodge them. If you try and shoot them, you end up wasting a lot of ammo because it takes so many bullets before they even drop. But, likewise on the other hand, if you try and dodge them and then get bit, you have to hope that you have a herb or a health spray to then bring yourself back up to full health, or you will simply just die the next time you are grabbed. This constant question and challenge of when you should attack and when you should just dodge is something that persists throughout the entire gameplay. You can try and attack these zombies and later on the Crimson Heads and the Hunters, but you will definitely drain some resources. However, if you don't attack, one hit from a hunter can ruin your entire last hour of gameplay if you didn't get to a save station yet. So I will admit that during this first hour or so of gameplay, I was getting really frustrated at this game. I kept backtracking through the same hallways because I wasn't exactly sure where I should and shouldn't be going. I mean, I couldn't find the keys, I couldn't solve half these puzzles, I felt like I was missing so many pieces and I thought that I had missed it, rather than I just wasn't able to get it at that time, and I guess I never realized just how reliant I had gotten on the bright yellow paint and the blood splatters that lead us as players in the modern day games. Add that to all of the previous struggles that I discussed about the controls, about this being an older style of gameplay, about trying to balance the ammo, the health, the ink ribbon, the zombies, the attacks, when not to attack. I was just getting a bit tired of this. So despite all of the comedy that came from the Jill sandwich scene, I didn't really like this experience at this moment. This is definitely one of those times that I probably would have stopped playing the game if I wasn't on livestream. I definitely had to push myself to continue past this frustrating section of gameplay, and found it harder and harder to keep myself committed to this game. So as I started to stumble around the mansion, it got to a point in the game, one particular turning point, that made me commit to this stumbling, fumbling, blind playthrough game style that continued throughout the rest of the game. And that moment in particular was when I eventually stumbled into the graveyard and found all of the right pieces to unlock the tomb that reveals the mysteriously chained up and hanging coffin. Now, unlike some random door that's locked in the middle of the mansion, this looked evil and I had to see what was inside. Like a moth to a flame, this thing caught my attention immediately, and from then on out, I knew what I had to do. I had to see what was in there. Just like how in the mansion, the doors to the basement are locked shut with this gate, and you could hear the distant wailing and moaning. It kind of teases you as to what is there. You get a little intrigued, but there's so much mystery behind it that it keeps you playing the game, and this chained up coffin did just that. So as I rushed back into the mansion trying to find all of the death masks, I was 100% committed at this point. With my newfound determination to continue with this game, I ended up exploring more and more parts of the building before I ended up stumbling upon Richard, a member of the Bravo team who is found injured.
Richard! What happened? You're wounded.
This whole place is a killing zone. There are monsters.
What did this to you?
A big snake. And it had to be poisonous.
Poisonous? Richard, hold on.
Bring me serum. I saw some, but didn't bring any.
I'll go and get it, okay? You're gonna make it.
Thanks.
Now, if you were playing as Chris, this is also your first introduction to Rebecca Chambers, who is also a member of Bravo team that is seen here trying to treat Richard's wounds. She will keep popping up throughout Chris's campaign, much like how Barry shows up for Jill. Yet, this encounter and this scene led me to a brand new realization about what this game has to offer. Your decisions in your game can actually go on to change the story. You see, when I first stumbled upon Richard, I actually ended up getting him killed. I didn't realize there was this secret countdown going on that would eventually result in Richard's death. I ended up just exploring the rest of this area that I had recently unlocked. I ended up getting a whole other cutscene with Barry and the Bumblebee key, and by the time I finally got the serum and got back to the room, well, this scene occurred. Luckily enough, I did end up dying not too long afterward, so I got to replay this section and I was able to save Richard. I'm very happy to report I did not kill him on purpose a second time. However, saving Richard actually resulted in him helping us out in the boss fight with Yawn the giant snake in the following scene, and I was really shocked at this moment. I am so surprised that this game, that is again almost 30 years old from the original, ended up having some sort of butterfly effect attributes to it.
Thanks.
Jill!
Now, it's obviously not a true butterfly effect game, but the fact that they went through the extra effort and the attention to detail and the added processing power that goes towards these additional cutscenes is something that really shocked me and was definitely a pleasant surprise to find. Now, with me running around the rooms earlier and stumbling upon Barry acting a bit sketchy in between trying to save Richard, it was clear that I was definitely going through these rooms a bit out of order. So, to all of the speedrunners out there and people that have played this game multiple times, my blind playthrough is probably going to give you some anxiety. Yet, it was during this chaotic running around that something interesting started to happen. One of the zombies that I had killed before suddenly stood back up again and was seemingly running straight at me. Now, luckily enough, this guy was trapped behind a box, so he was not going to be able to reach us. We nicknamed this guy Frederick. He was a great little pet to have throughout this section. However, these types of zombies mutate from the previously killed ones and are called Crimson Heads. They're fast, they appear almost like werewolves, and they also take a little bit more ammo to drop. With this newfound concern of the zombies coming back in a worse form to attack you, you then have to try and stop them by burning the bodies that you had killed earlier. This added yet again another level of resource issues, as I had to make sure that I always had some kerosene in order to light the zombies on fire. I'd constantly debate if I should use it on a zombie over here that I just killed, or perhaps on the other side of the mansion where I had killed one earlier. So as I left Frederick behind to explore the mansion and probably kill off some of his friends, I walked down a hallway I had walked down a couple times by now, only to get jump scared when I least expected it. We will get the whistle, we will get more. Ah! No, 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 no! Now, I haven't really talked about the horror elements in this game because, frankly, there's not that many, but this is one of the few times that the jump scares actually effectively got me. I was not expecting anything to happen when I just walked down this hallway that, again, I had been through before. So having the dogs jump through the window definitely caught me off guard and created a brand new challenge for this area. You see, there's a refuel station for your kerosene lighter all the way at the end of the hallway outside in the backyard. Because of the limit on the kerosene refuel stations, I needed to come back here as it was the only place that I could refuel. I had used up all the other 2 locations, so the game was definitely starting to keep me on my toes here with all of these added challenges. I'm not only trying to find the keys to solve the puzzles to unlock the next door that continues the story, but I'm also trying to keep track of my health, my ammo, where I had just recently killed a zombie, where there might be a potential Crimson Head, where there are dogs, where can I refuel my kerosene, and am I doing everything in accordance with the cutscenes to make sure that no other side characters can die. The game was adding on layer after layer of complexities to the overall gameplay experience, and despite all of these challenges, I was really starting to enjoy myself. I was getting into the rhythm of things, and obviously the more things I unlocked, the easier the gameplay became. So despite all of the chaos of this playthrough, I did eventually find the 4th and final death mask, which I was so excited to bring down to the graveyard in order to see what was in that mysterious coffin. And, well, to no one's surprise, it was just another Crimson Head, although it was a bit of a stronger one. It did take a bit more ammo to drop. However, at this time, I did feel like I was a bit overpowered. I was able to get through this sort of mini boss fight fairly quickly, and I was so eager to see what was inside the coffin that this Crimson Head was guarding. Sure enough, inside was one of the 2 pieces needed in order to unlock the mysterious gates to the basement. Having searched almost the entire mansion by now, and in need of one more key to unlock the final few doors, our time at the mansion will come to a brief close as Jill goes on to enter into the courtyard outside. Going down one out of the 2 pathways will lead us into a courtyard with more of those infected dogs, only to lead us to a dead end where we find a bridge in need of a handle. Backtracking through the other pathway, you end up stumbling upon what appears to be a garden shed, where Jill starts to find something interesting. Right next to the crank handle, Jill ends up finding a note that appears to be written from a child asking for their mom and dad. But before you can even give this note too much thought, Jill comes face to face with the creature that was heard moaning and wailing from the top of those basement stairs in the mansion. This creature is not only terrifying because of the tentacle-like things that are spawning out of its back, but it's also chained up and it's dragging the chains as it walks, while also having a bag over its head. Yet, with nothing else for you to do aside from run out of there, trust me, if you try to fight it you will die, you are forced to leave this creature and all of its mysteries behind, at least for right now in the game. The questions about what happened to this character and this person, who were they before this event, what happened to them at the mansion, how are they involved, all of those questions still remained in the back of my mind as I continued through the rest of the gameplay. So even though there were some sections in the next couple hours of gameplay that did start to feel a bit slow and did get a bit tiresome or just a little bizarre and it felt out of place, yes, I'm talking about those sharks, we'll get to them in a minute, this mysterious creature kept me going during those low points. So as I made my way to the new section of the map, I was very eager to get in and out of there swiftly so that I could return to the mystery of the mansion and, more importantly, find some answers in that locked up basement. Entering into the residence, we now have the added challenge of poisonous elements at play. Now, we had already been introduced to the blue herb a bit earlier that talked about healing and curing poison. I do just want to take a brief moment to talk about the healing aspects of this game because I do find them to be ever so slightly unique. You see, in the previous Resident Evil games that I have played, aka 7 and 8, you have one healing element. You can craft it from your same equipment, and while you have to be a bit resourceful about when to use certain materials for health or for ammo, this game does something different in the sense that you have a herb that can either heal you one step up, taking you from danger to caution, or you could save that herb, hope you don't get killed before that, in order to find a second herb to bring you up to full health when you combine the two. This healing feature definitely posed a slight challenge for me because I'd always be wondering if I should take the singular herb right then and there in anticipation for an unknown enemy hidden around the corner, in the next hallway, or in the next room, or if I should save it in hopes that I end up finding perhaps a red herb to combine it with. While I've played other games that use a smaller healing element, the fact that this is the same resource used for both the smaller health and the larger health definitely made this all the more challenging, but is one of the many things that kept me on my toes throughout this gameplay and kept me interested and invested in the game. As Jill enters into the residence and turns the corner down the hallway, she ends up stumbling upon a door where she overhears Barry talking to someone else.
No, that wasn't part of our deal. But it's not necessary to destroy stars. What about my family? If I play my cards right.
Barry had already been acting sketchy earlier. However, now, with his phone call, he almost seems to be endangering everyone's lives that are a part of the STARS team. However, Jill, not wanting to anger him or risk her life in that moment, decides it's best not to confront him about it. Going down the ladder and into this laboratory section, Jill will encounter a few different types of enemies here. We not only have poisonous spiders that are just disgusting and gigantic, but we also have a whole section of sharks. Now, these sort of infected, rampant sharks are definitely a bizarre choice. I don't know exactly what the justification of them studying this was, but what I do know is this section started to feel weird to me. Maybe it was the fact that we lost the amazing ambiance and tone that the mansion created by going into this laboratory section, or maybe it was just the enemy sharks that we can't really attack and we just have to run from, rather than the zombies in the hallways that were in the mansion. This section was just a bit strange to me. But it's at this section of gameplay, if you were playing as Chris Redfield, that Richard would actually die. See, if Chris was able to save Richard earlier with the help of Rebecca Chambers, Richard and Rebecca would make their way to the residence with Chris, and Richard would end up sacrificing himself, much like he does for Jill with Yawn, in front of this giant shark. It really is quite tragic that no matter which character you play as, Richard is going to die and sacrifice himself either way. But after you go on to defeat these sharks and get justice for Richard, Jill will then have the option to poison a plant that both her and Chris will have to face in the following boss fight. Jill gets the option to create something called the V-Jolt chemical mixture that she finds in the laboratory, while Chris has to face it head-on. Now, you don't have to use the chemical mixture when playing as Jill, but it does make the following boss fight almost insignificant because as Barry jumps in front of Jill, almost sacrificing himself, the plant will soon shrivel up. But with Barry's heroic act, you can't help but wonder which version of himself is the true one. The one that we heard on the phone call earlier, or the one right in front of us now, sacrificing his life, not knowing that Jill had already previously poisoned this plant. So as Jill grabs the key, which is the fourth and final key for all of those remaining locked doors at the mansion house, Barry's loyalty is definitely seen to be up in the air as she runs into Wesker, who only seems to confirm her concerns over Barry's loyalty.
Jill, so you're safe.
That's what I was going to say.
I apologize. It was all I could do to protect myself against those strange creatures.
I understand. Anyway, it's good that you're safe.
Did you notice? Barry, he sounded a little flaky.
Now that you mention it, yeah. I'll keep a close eye.
Maybe it's quite natural under these circumstances. It's not really our standard operation. Jill, our first priority is to get out of here.
I agree.
There are still rooms in that mansion we can't get into because they're locked up. I've been looking for ways to...
Okay, if there's anything, I'll go back to the other mansion.
I'm counting on you.
Chris will also go on to encounter Wesker in this exact moment in his campaign, but Wesker comes across as more of a cold, stoic leader when talking to Chris, rather than the almost gossipy coworker when talking to Jill.
Wesker?
Chris, you're alive.
My words exactly. Where's Jill? Thought you were with her.
Yeah, I know. We got separated.
I see.
I will say, even though the sharks were a bit weird and the spiders are definitely not my favorites, this section of gameplay I thoroughly enjoyed because we were constantly running into people here. Now I know it's mostly Barry that we're running into, but compared to the mansion where it was so scarce to run into people, the residence section I felt was a nice well-rounded area, even though again, the section with the sharks just seemed a bit off as a whole. But as I left this section of gameplay entering into the courtyard, we suddenly hear Brad over the radio.
This is Brad. Come in, Stars Alpha Team. Come in.
This is Jill!
Does anybody hear me?
I hear you, Brad! Over!
Stars Alpha Team. Bravo Team. Doesn't matter. Respond! I repeat, this is Brad.
Brad? Brad!
This is Brad. If you can't answer me, somehow give me a sign.
Jill to Brad! Can you hear me? Brad! Brad! Shit, it's broken.
With this tiny sliver of hope and the possibility of survival starting to come into focus here, with all of my ammo and health that I was feeling quite comfortable with, I rushed back towards the mansion, going down that familiar pathway through the courtyard, before the game caught me completely off guard. Oh, what the frickety frick are you? Holy No. I think my reaction kind of says it all here. I was absolutely terrified to see what the heck was chasing after us at this speed. The sheer panic that I felt when I entered into the mansion, only to find this brand new enemy, this lizard reptile-like creature that is jumping, screaming, and screeching at me, and then to find out that there's more than just one, was a completely unexpected challenge. Not to mention the fact that they can one-shot you in this one type of attack here, which made it really frustrating and annoying when you would encounter more than one hunter in a hallway. But I will admit that even though these hunters are quite annoying and frustrating to deal with throughout the rest of the gameplay, the developers really nailed this timing. Seeing the point of view of this creature at this particular moment in the game, which I already said I was feeling quite comfortable with my resources in the gameplay at this point, it really was just impeccable timing, so I have to give the developers a round of applause for this. They really have the pacing down to a T for when to elevate the complexity of these new enemies and new areas. So as I tried to avoid all of these different hunters, making my way around the mansion, trying to remember which rooms were still locked, I ended up finding more and more notes that reveal a bit more information as to what happened here. Now, I had been finding notes throughout the entire gameplay. They were in the residence where you got a little bit more information on the research, but it's really within this last few sections here that you truly get some notes from Oswald Spencer himself, where you'll learn a little bit more about his plans for covering up this secret laboratory and on his research itself. Having executed the architect who designed this mansion to help cover up the laboratory, Oswald Spencer is responsible for the events here in the Arklay Mountains and the Spencer Mansion. I mentioned Oswald Spencer in my Resident Evil 8 video because Resident Evil 8 actually ties back to this very first game. When unlocking the room with the family crest, we end up finding notes from Oswald Spencer that talks a little bit about his research on the progenitor. We also have stumbled upon different research notes earlier talking about a Type A and Type B formula for this research. Later on, we go on to discover that his main research and his main end result was the T-virus, a strand of the progenitor that Oswald Spencer curated for the desired results. But aside from his research, there's really not much information stated about Sir Oswald Spencer as a character. Well, at least, aside from him being a pretty horrible guy that does illegal human testing, it's just completely immoral. But anyway, even though the notes still don't answer all of our questions, the story is starting to come together now. So with my ever so slowly dwindling resources, we go on to encounter yet again a boss fight with Yawn the poisonous snake, this time surely killing him permanently, before we end up finally getting the battery that we need to access the elevator back in the courtyard. So as I make my way, dodging all of the hunters' attacks, I go back to the courtyard, and this time I stop by that bridge once more in order to turn the crank handle to shut the water off, which goes on to reveal a whole new section of the map. As Jill enters these secret tunnels, she goes on to encounter Enrico, another member of the STARS team, but it becomes immediately apparent that there is someone out to kill every single member of STARS.
Is that you, Jill?
Is that voice Enrico's?
Yeah?
You're alive!
Stop! Are you with anybody, Jill?
No, but why?
The stars are finished. Someone is a traitor. Umbrella set us up.
Enrico! Traitor? Who?
I'm sorry, this scene is just kind of ridiculous. It's just perfectly cheesy for me. It makes me laugh every time. Because how in the heck did Jill not see or hear or find whoever just shot her team member? This game definitely has its fair share of random, wacky moments that just make no sense. But you know what? This game is 23 years old, so let's cut it some slack here, and let's let this moment slide. However, while I can let this cheesy scene and this scene that makes absolutely no sense go, I can't move on from just how bad this section in the tunnels actually is. Down in the tunnels is where the game starts to really drag on for me. You're walking down these tunnels, you have to solve these few puzzles in here that feel a bit aimless and pointless, while trying to figure out who is this creature that is following you around the tunnels. The atmosphere of this section was just not that inviting or enjoyable, and I get it, they're dark, creepy tunnels, but they're really kind of boring and drab. Not to mention, you have a pointless encounter and fight with some more spiders in order to progress the story, and the almost comedic effect of the characters potentially being run over by these rolling boulders. We once again get another comedic scene here, with Barry just straight up leaving Jill behind to die.
What the hell is that sound? It could be a person.
Jill, go check it out. We had enough surprises for one day. I'll stay here and secure our escape route in case something happens.
Okay. Barry!
There was no way Barry knew for certain that Jill was going to make it out of this situation alive, so while Barry was seen sacrificing himself earlier, he is now seen doing the complete opposite. The absolute whiplash of this character, again, just makes me laugh because it's starting to get a little bit ridiculous in the characterization and story at this point. The one thing that sort of kept me going was that question of what or who is this creature that keeps following us around in the tunnel. And to my greatest joy, the way that Jill escapes this tunnel is by going through a mysterious room that almost seems to be a makeshift bedroom. This is where we end up learning about Lisa Trevor, aka this wailing, moaning, and groaning creature that has been following us around. While we don't learn everything about her story just yet, we do learn that she originally came to this mansion with her parents. Later on, we will discover, or perhaps after your gameplay, like myself, I ended up researching a little bit more about her character, but we end up learning that her father's company is responsible for creating this mansion that would hide the laboratory. Since Oswald Spencer didn't want people finding out about this, he invited the family as well as other people that worked on the project to come and stay there before he ended up using them as human test subjects. Lisa and her mother ended up being test subjects for the progenitor type A and B samples, which has clearly resulted in this sad state for Lisa Trevor. While in Lisa's room, however, we find the few remaining pieces that we need in order to create the last piece to unlock the mysterious gate back at the mansion. And as we follow this mysterious tunnel, we end up back in that garden shed where we first encountered Lisa, which is outside of the mansion past that courtyard. Eventually, finding our way back into the mansion for the final time in the game, we use the piece to unlock the basement door, only to find ourselves heading down the steps to a mysterious cave opening where we end up fighting Lisa Trevor herself.
Start talking.
Calm down. I didn't want to do it. Believe me, I can explain.
Don't lie to me!
Now, in this fight scene when I was playing as Jill, I kinda got Barry killed. I guess I just thought that somehow Barry would be able to escape, and I honestly thought we would encounter Lisa once more in one final showdown as we made our escape. But we sadly did not. So in my playthrough, I did end up getting Barry killed, and I didn't really die before I got too far in the game. So there was no going back and fixing it. My apologies, Barry. It's entirely my fault. But if I was to play the game again, I would definitely make sure that Barry survives. So with this sad loss, I continued forward down this new section of the map through the basement, only to find the main laboratory. Now, at this point in the game, I had been on livestream for about 5 hours now. I really wanted to get to the ending of this game, and I thought we were almost there. I thought when we would get out of here, we'd press the detonation button and we would be able to fly off into the distance. But it did not go that quickly. Looking back at the story, there's not too much story elements that kept my interest here to keep me as motivated and invested in the rest of the storytelling. We learned what was in the basement, and we learned about this mysterious creature who is Lisa Trevor and her sad story. And while there is some interesting information coming through about how the labs worked, how they did their research, what went wrong, we kind of feel detached from those stories. We don't have any characters actively involved in it anymore, now that we've defeated our main subject, Lisa Trevor. So I kind of didn't like this ending to the game. It definitely started to drag at this point, and it was getting pretty miserable. But as always, I pushed through because I wanted to see what type of endings we would get, especially now that Barry had died. Then, to my surprise, I did not expect to find Chris just sitting in a jail cell locked up like he's doing absolutely nothing this entire game. That had me laughing out loud. He's not doing anything, he's just a prisoner. Something about that was just so funny to me. Probably just the fact that I'm coming from games where he is more of a main character and he is this sort of action-packed team leader dude. Seeing him sitting there like a damsel in distress waiting to be rescued just made me laugh really hard. So with us finally rescuing Chris, or if you're playing as Chris, rescuing Jill, you will eventually make your way down into the final section of the laboratory, where you face both Wesker and one of the tyrants that Wesker has awoken from its slumber.
Smart girl, but I think you misunderstand me. The things you mention are nothing. I'll burn all of them along with this entire laboratory. That will be the end of my connection with Umbrella.
What? What are you planning?
I want to show you something. The ultimate life form. Tyrant.
You couldn't have been experimenting on people. No.
It's beautiful.
For the sake of this thing?
You'll never understand.
I'll deal with you, freak.
Wesker is revealed to be the one that has set up the STARS team to become victims and get trapped in this mansion of terrors. He is revealed to be working for someone other than the STARS team, and with this, he attacks Jill with the Tyrant. It is here, in this small, confined space, that you have to fight this Tyrant in order to stop it so that you can get the key from Wesker to then activate the self-destruct button before escaping. The Tyrant is massively tall and really intimidating, but while it took me a couple tries to defeat, it actually wasn't the worst boss fight in the world. Probably because it actually wasn't the real boss fight with the Tyrant, but we'll get to that in a minute. So as you escape this section, you go on to detonate the self-destruct for the whole laboratory in the mansion house, and then you have this mad dash to try and escape before the timer runs out. You're getting Chris, you're rescuing Barry, you're meeting up with Rebecca Chambers. Everyone is joining up together as they rush to escape to the rooftop and have Brad pick them up. But it is then, in that moment, that the Tyrant suddenly jumps out of the building onto the rooftop, chasing and attacking all four of you. So in one final showdown, you have to try and defeat the Tyrant and deal enough damage until Brad eventually tosses you this epic rocket launcher to then finally destroy the Tyrant for good and fly off into the sun, watching the explosion in the distance. I get it now. I understand why this series is so popular and how this game series became so iconic with such an amazing first game as this. Listen, even though the gameplay wasn't necessarily my cup of tea when I first started, and I definitely had some challenges as I discussed, I can't help but find myself looking back at this game with a feeling of warmth and joy, having finally played the original Resident Evil game. I have definitely gained a newfound appreciation for the older style of video games here, and I can't wait to see how we get from this game to the eventual Resident Evil 7 and 8 that we've already played and talked about here. So at the end of my experience, despite all of the challenges, the lack of inventory space, the limited health resources, the limited ammo in general, the confusing puzzles, the lack of knowing where exactly to go, the issue with the ink ribbons, and every single challenge that I faced in this game, I do not regret playing this game. The layering of these challenges made this a very unique experience that I ended up having a lot of fun playing as I got to know and learn how to balance all of these difficult tasks. With an enjoyable story, and yes, some comedic and cheesy moments woven in there that definitely made this feel a lot more lighthearted and enjoyable, this game impressed me way more than I expected it to. So if there's one thing I've learned from this game, if there's one lesson I took away from this entire story and gameplay experience, it's that I need to play more video games that are out of my comfort zone, because who knows, I might just end up enjoying it like I did with this one. So with that, everyone, if you made it this far into the video, let me know by leaving a hat emoji down in the comment section below in honor of Jill and her iconic beret. If you guys like my discussion, please hit that like button down below and leave all of your thoughts in the comment section. Would you guys want a brand new remake of this game, or do you like it in its original iconic style? If you want to see my live playthroughs of these games, you can follow me over on Twitch or check out the live streams here on YouTube. Be sure you guys click subscribe to see more videos from me, and turn on notifications if you want to be notified whenever I post a new video. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you future souls next time. Bye, guys!